How are you doing today? Okay, so the first thing that I'm asking everybody who comes on is, what would you not be able to get through this ordeal without having to watch on TV?
Like, what TV program could I not survive this quarantine without?
Yep.
My wife and I are actually working our way through The Handmaid's Tale right now. So we just finished season 1. We're a couple episodes into season 2.
Okay, great answer. Excellent show. Talk to me a little bit about, I'm curious for you whether you got into miles and points first or whether you got into travel first.
Travel first.
Okay.
I grew up in a family where my parents really enjoyed traveling, and as they kind of like worked up out of like lower like working class into like moving into middle class, then travel became kind of like the lifestyle luxury that was new and open to them. So my parents started with like, road trip to Hilton Head or something like this. And then kind of eventually we were able to do more travel, and kind of my sister and I both now are really big into travel. My sister has worked for a bunch of different NGOs throughout her life that have sent her to like a lot of kind of far-flung places. So travel definitely first, and then I got into miles and points like 3 years ago after I had already done a pretty decent amount of travel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now this is probably a good time for you to tell everybody what your ethos is, like what you're trying to do and what makes you so unique as far as, your goal.
Sure. So I'm using miles and points mostly to accomplish a goal of mine, which is to visit every country in the world. So miles and points has made that a lot easier. In some ways, it has kind of sped up the amount of travel that I'm able to do, because obviously it costs me less now.
Mm-hmm.
But it has also kind of changed the way that I travel, because, like, for example, a couple of years ago when I visited all the countries in Central America, like from Costa Rica to Nicaragua, you'd spend like 8 hours on like a broken down old US yellow school bus as the way to get from like one country to another. That's much slower, but the price is great. Now, if I can pay the same amount of just like what I paid for that bus is the same amount that I can pay in taxes on an award flight, it's much, much faster, obviously. So then gives you more time actually being there versus like 8 hours on this bus or like a 1 hour flight. You have now 7 more hours seeing the place that you're going to.
Okay, so it sounds like for you, it's all about the trip and not the journey.
Yeah. So using points and miles has enabled me to kind of get to places sooner while not, and kind of in some ways keeping the cost the same while going faster, and in other ways helping to bring down the cost. The airfare is always the most expensive part of trips, at least for me. And I think for most people. So drastically reducing the cost of airfare has really helped me then be able to take that next trip sooner.
Right.
Because I'm not still paying off the last trip.
Wow. Okay, so give us the numbers. How many countries? I will admit that I don't know how many countries there actually are. So I bet you do.
That's actually a very divisive question, because what you count as a country really has a lot of political considerations. For example, do you think Taiwan is a country?
I would say yes.
Okay, but Taiwan is not, but they're not a member of the United Nations, because
so is it the same thing as like not Hong Kong, Macau?
So like Hong Kong and Macau are technically part of China, but they're considered a special economic zone where it's like a free trade zone. They have their own currency, they issue their own passports, but they're technically, most of the world considers them part of China. And China actually has has thrown fits with a lot of airlines. If you think about this, because when you go to an airline, let's say like Norwegian Air, and you go to their website and you click on like, where do we fly? China routinely clicks on those websites and looks at all of the places that fly to China, and they look at how you describe the cities that they consider like China considers Taiwan to be rightfully part of China. The whole rest of the world doesn't agree with them, but China believes that Taiwan belongs to China. So they will routinely go to the website of airlines, American Airlines, Delta, Norwegian, British, and they will look at how do those airlines describe the places that they fly to. So China, that's an easy one. Within China, we fly to Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, blah, blah, blah. And then if you say, we also fly to like Hong Kong, we also fly to Taiwan, and those aren't listed under China, the Chinese government will issue a letter to like basically cease and desist to those airlines saying, these are rightfully part of China. And if you don't fix the verbiage on your website, you will lose your license to fly into Chinese airspace.
So have any of them actually lost their licenses to your knowledge?
No, but what they will do is that they try to circumvent it because they don't want, but they also don't want to go the other way and then make Taiwan mad and not be allowed to fly to Taiwan now. So what they will do is to try to like walk this middle ground. Well, they'll say like China and Taiwan and like list them together or do these kinds of things so that they're trying to make everyone happy and not jeopardizing their ability to fly to different places.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so in your estimate or in the way you see
to come back to the original question.
Oh, no, it's okay.
To come back to the original question, there are 193 members of the United Nations. So everyone considers those 193 like, yeah, for sure, those are countries. But then countries that most people would say are a country but aren't a member of the United Nations, like the Vatican. It's a country by all intents and purposes. Kosovo, yeah, it's pretty much a country. Taiwan, I don't know anyone who thinks that Taiwan isn't a country. So just by those standards, we're now at 196. Then you start getting into more political questions of like, what about Palestine? Is that a country? So as we go kind of further down that rabbit hole, so bare minimum 193, most people would say probably 196.
Okay.
And then the other one that has a lot of international recognition, but still needs to kind of go further for most people to consider it a country would be the Sahrawi People's Republic, which most people know by the name of Western Sahara. And if you go look at a map, it's the space between Mauritania and Morocco that kind of always has that dotted line around it on the map. And it just says like disputed borders. Yeah, disputed borders. They have their own currency. They control some of their own borders. Their people are kind of ethnically consider themselves not Moroccan. They're recognized by about 40 to 45 members of the United Nations. So not enough to get a majority to admit them into the United Nations yet, but they're recognized by enough countries to meet most definitions of what a country is. They have a military, those kinds of things.
Wow, this is so interesting. Never knew any of this stuff at all. I just figured it was like 190 something.
Yeah, so it's something that most people usually don't think about.
Well, that's something you actually do have to think about. So, okay, so your personal list.
So I would say there's 198.
Okay. Now.
And I've been to 140.
Wow. How long did it take you from start to finish of deciding this was your goal to get to 140?
That kind of evolved over time. I never thought that I would be at this point. So originally one day, like years ago, I watched the movie The Bucket List with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicklaus. And I thought, hey, that's great. What are some things that I want to do before I die? And when I originally made this bucket list, one of my goals was to try to go to 100 countries someday. Well, when I got there, I was like, okay, what's next? And then it kind of morphed into like, why don't I just try to visit every country?
Okay, and so how long did it take you to get to the 100?
I went to number 100 in 2016.
Okay. And when did you start?
My first country that I ever went to outside the US, I mean, I was really young. My family was in San Diego and we went to Tijuana for 2 days from San Diego. And then like another time we went to Niagara Falls and I went to Canada from there. So, I mean, if we're really counting from then to now, I
No,
mean, it's
like
been
active,
30
like
years.
actively going after
But
the
when did
goal.
I really start? When did I really start thinking about this? I would say probably like 2006. So let's say we're like
Wow.
almost 15 years into it,
Uh-huh.
14-ish. I lived in Germany for a while when I was in the army, and that really kind of accelerated things because it's so easy to just go to another country for the weekend.
Yep.
I was really lucky that a good friend of mine was working also in Germany at the same time, but like 2 hours away from where I live. So whenever we would get German holidays and US holidays off of work. So we had
Oh,
a
that's
lot of
cool.
long weekends. So it was like, oh, it's Labor Day, long weekend. Where can we go? And we were just
Mhm.
like, let's go to Liechtenstein. Let's go to Austria. Let's go to the Netherlands. It was super easy. So things really started increasing around that time. That was like 2012, 2013, 2014.
Okay. So now, obviously, I'm sure this is what everybody wants to know. What has been your toughest country to get to? And like, what's your craziest story that you can't believe you did this?
So toughest country to get to that I actually was able to get into. So there are two countries that have Congo in their name. They are on the two sides of the Congo River going through the middle of Africa. So most people refer to them, they have really long names, the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Way too long. So most people just refer to them by their capital. Congo Brazzaville, Congo Kinshasa. Much simpler. Congo
Mhm.
Kinshasa is usually the one I think most people think of when they hear Congo because it's the one where you can go and see gorillas, blah, blah, blah. You can literally just take a boat from one side of the river to the other one. 3 minutes tops, now you're in the other country. They're the two closest capitals of the world. So it's like cost $5 or something. So I took this boat, got over to, went from Kinshasa to Brazzaville. Both of those countries are unfortunately known for corruption at the border, like asking for bribes, this kind of
Mhm.
stuff, because like I don't look like I'm from here. So
Right.
it's pretty easy to pick out the foreign guy. My French isn't horrible, but it's not amazing. So trying to talk to like some border officials, blah, 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 had to get a visa. To get the visa, you need a letter from your hotel saying, yes, you have a confirmed reservation. What's the manager of the hotel, their contact information, blah, blah, blah. I got a recommendation from a friend for a company that was really easy. Like they reply to emails very quickly, can set you up, give you this letter of invitation. So I show up in Brazzaville at the like boat port, come across, and yeah, hey, here's my letter of invitation, here's my visa. And the guy says, sure, pulls out his phone, calls the hotel to verify if I'm actually staying there. No one answers.
Jeez.
So it became a huge problem because it was a small hotel, and like just kind of run by a family. So it was in the afternoon, lunch was finished, all their like restaurant was closed between lunch and dinner. And like the mom and the mom had gone to pick up the kid from school, the dad had gone to the supermarket. So no one was there answering the phone. And the lady who's like chopping vegetables to prepare the restaurant for dinner, she's not going to go answer the phone. She doesn't know anything about who's staying here, none of this. So it was like a good 2 hours of me just sitting there where they would like wait 15 minutes, call again, wait 15 minutes, call again. And eventually the guy said, the last boat going back leaves in 5 minutes.
Oh,
If we can't get a hold of them to confirm like you really are going to be staying there and that they have a room for you, we're putting you on that last boat. So I gave
wait, this
a
is only a 5-minute boat ride though, right? at
Right, but
least.
it's the last
Okay.
boat going back for the night, and
Right.
then I'm gonna have to
Right.
go back. But I already left that country, and my visa was only valid for one entry. So if they send me back, I don't know if I can get in. I might just have to sit in the port overnight and try again tomorrow morning. Becomes a like really complicated situation where this country doesn't let you in, but that country won't let you come back.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get stuck in the port. So I gave like $1. Like I always try to carry a little bit of US cash because people in countries with currencies that aren't worth as much,
Mm-hmm.
like US dollars, tend to like US dollars. So I was like, $1 for you, $1 for you, $1 for you for 3 guys. And I was like, call this number, ring that phone until somebody gets a headache and picks it up. There's got to be someone around. And they
Wait, they
just
did that
started,
for $1? $1.
yeah. So they just pulled out their mobile phones, and these guys just sit there, call, and just sit there and let it ring, 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 until finally somebody comes and grabs the phone, and we're like, here's the situation. The manager of the hotel needs to call me back on this number in less than 5 minutes. So, like she calls the manager calls back to this phone, the guy hands the phone. For me, it was worth $3,
Of
but
course.
I had been there for 2.5 hours stressed about what's going on. So I kind of learned, yeah, small hotels can be great. It's nice if like supporting a locally owned place. In that city, there's no hotel to redeem awards for except Radisson. I have no Radisson points.
Okay.
So like finding a place from a friend's recommendation can sound great, but at the same time, a small hotel doesn't have like a 24 hours front desk where someone is just sitting there by the phone. That was definitely the most stressful, like trying to get into a country, what's happening right now. So that was a lot of fun. The most crazy redemption that I've ever made was I actually redeemed 8,000 United miles to fly into Somalia last year.
Wow.
There's
8,000. That's it, huh?
yeah, just 8,000 United miles. There's a daily flight that leaves Istanbul with Turkish Airlines, lands in Djibouti, which is a really small country in between like Ethiopia, Egypt, Somalia. Touches down, some people get off, some people get on, and then it continues on to Somalia. So it's a fifth freedom flight, runs daily. And I'm willing to bet that I'm one of really few people that's ever redeemed miles on this Turkish Airlines fifth freedom flight to go from Djibouti to Somalia, which is Mogadishu is considered like one of the least safe countries in the world. Can't even get out of the airport unless there's like an armed guy with a machine gun who's there to vouch for you that says like he's picking you up.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of my funniest redemptions. I'm sure not many people redeemed for this flight.
Wow. So knowing that about Mogadishu, that's how you say it, that
Mhm.
wasn't your most stressful like experience?
No, because actually in order to go there, you basically need to use a tour company. Like you are not just going to show
Okay.
up. You're not
Okay.
just going to show up there. You have to come with a tour guide. The process for even getting your passport stamped is that the tour companies line up basically outside arrivals, and you have to send them a picture of yourself. And the tour companies line up outside basically with like a piece of paper with your picture on it. And they're standing there just, like this, texting their friends, but they're just sitting there holding a picture of you. And the passport agent comes out with a passport and just does one of these and then finds the guy holding your picture and he says, he's here. And then if there's no one there to vouch for you and no one there to pick you up, you can't exit because the country like is kind of in a state of semi-lawlessness. It's not safe to just be walking around.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you have prearranged something, you're not getting through passport control. They go out and hey, is someone here to pick you up? Yep. No, it doesn't cut it. They will go and check that someone is there ready to pick you up. So it actually wasn't stressful at all because they knew what they were doing. I had transferred via Western Union to pay for the tour, and it went off without a hitch. So the
So this
stress for
sounds
me
like a
was
very
none. I
established
just sat there and
procedure.
yeah, the
Yeah.
procedure is super smooth. I arrived on one flight. The 3 people in my tour group arrived on a separate flight like an hour later. So we just hung out in the airport, got a coffee, waited for them to land. Same. And then I was able to kind of watch and see how the process worked because I was out
Hmm.
in the arrivals hall. So I was able to
Right.
watch this, like, you know, everyone kind of gets an alert on the cell phone, like the flight's landing, and they all run up and jostle for the position outside the door and are like holding up their pictures, looking for people. So the 3 guys that I was going on my tour with all were arriving on a separate flight. So I was able to watch this kind of organized madness of everyone claiming the people who are coming with their tour group. So it was kind of funny, but yeah, they've got a well-ironed process. They know what they're doing.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so at one point you told us in the Miles to Memories work Slack that there were some countries that you had to, and we can always edit this out, by the way, if you're,
Sure.
that there were some countries that you told your wife about after the fact because she might be a little nervous to know that you were planning on traveling. Which countries were those?
It was this trip actually that I was just telling you about.
Okay.
But afterwards, we actually we actually had a kind of a talk about that because you know, imagine getting the phone call like, "Hey, something went wrong. We're here. You know, I'm so and so calling you from this place," and you're like,
Hmm.
"What? I didn't know he
Yeah.
was there."
Where did you
Um,
tell her you were going?
uh, I just had told her that I was like in this city, and then she knew like later I was going to this city, but just kind of like omitted the part in the middle. Um, but so then later on, we kind of had a talk like they would really suck for her to find out that, you know, like something had gone wrong and something had happened to me in a place that, you know, she didn't know that I was.
Hmm.
I didn't tell. My mom also kind of worries. Like my parents are those kind of people
I
where
would
they
think.
have. My parents kind of have this mentality of travel that somehow they're going to like inadvertently break a law that they don't know exists in this other country,
I
and
do
they're
that
gonna
too, by the
and
way.
they're
I
gonna
feel like
like
that all
wind
the
up on
time.
that show. They're gonna wind up on that show locked up abroad.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh-huh.
like I'm in a prison in Peru because I didn't know that like jaywalking on a Sunday has the death penalty.
You know why
Uh,
they think that though? Probably from the guy who spit in Singapore and then they made it seem like that
yeah,
guy.
he got
Yeah.
40 beatings or
Flash.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because of
Um,
that guy. He scared the crap out of everybody.
So they kind of have this mentality. So sometimes I don't always tell them exactly like what's going on, just because they have like kind of an irrational view of travel sometimes.
Okay.
Um, but so I kind of just like fired off a text message to my parents when I was boarding the plane to fly to North Korea a couple of years ago,
Okay.
because your cell phones don't work there. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no
Hmm.
internet. Like you just, for the 4 days that you're here, you're not contacting anybody. So I was like, you're not going to hear from me for a few days. I'm boarding a flight to North Korea, but everything is fine, and I will message you in 4 days. Don't worry. When I came back, there was like 37 replies to this text message. You know, it's like, what?
That's wrong. That's just wrong.
But so, you know, I did notify them because I didn't want them to wonder why, like I wasn't replying to a message.
Hmm.
So,
Okay, so do you take any precautions now before you go on trips to like, you know, like let's say you do happen to get stuck somewhere or, you know, you have no access to anybody. Do you like write it out so that people know where you're going to be and how to like the consulate number and all that stuff?
no, I don't do like the whole consulate numbers and all that kind of stuff. But after the trip to Somalia, where like my wife and I kind of agreed that I would change some things of how I travel during solo trips to make it
Mhm.
easier to reach me. I did sign up for Google Fi, which is like they have their international data plans. So even if my phone, like sometimes I can't make a call, but I can reply to like a WhatsApp message. It works
Right.
pretty much everywhere I've been since then.
Okay.
So that way I'm able to reach people. I try to check in with my wife more often during solo trips, like, hey, just saying hi, like, here's a picture of something that made me laugh. So that way she kind of knows that I'm alive. She knows what hotel I'm at. So like, hey, I'm, boarding flight number 73 going to this place that I'm going to be at, like the Hilton. So that way she at least kind of has some idea. I also signed us both up for the Alliance travel, which they have like a unlimited like world premiere plan, which includes things like emergency medical evacuation. Like if I would break my leg and there's no hospital there that can take me, they will like medically evacuate me to a decent hospital. Those kinds of things. It's $450 for a year for two people, which I find worth it. They cover your standard travel things like canceled flights, lost luggage fees, blah, 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 those kinds of things. But then also things like emergency medical care. If you have to, like, let's say there's like, they assassinate the president and close the borders and you've got to like bribe somebody to get you out of the country. They can help with some of those kinds of like emergency situations as well that like, my Sapphire Preferred is not going to cover.
Right.
So it's those two things I find are worth paying for to kind of have somebody who's going to look out for me.
Yes. Now, so I've been looking into that lately because with all the travel I do, it's kind of insane that I don't have an insurance plan. Was that the price for two because they only, okay. And then do you remember what it was for one, just out of curiosity?
I think it was like 400. The second person second person, not that much extra.
Like might as well just add it. Oh.
And I went they have even one plan that's above this and it was more, but I felt like the extra things that it offers, I didn't feel like I needed. But I don't remember what they were, but I was like, I just can't see myself really needing that. Right. But there was an even higher plan that was like $650. But this one I felt like covers everything for like emergency evacuations, lost luggage.
Pretty good.
You miss a connection and have to buy a new flight, they can reimburse you for that.
And do you have to register your travel beforehand or no?
No. Okay. It's valid for a year and valid everywhere except for, I think it's valid everywhere except for places that are like a banned travel destination. For example, like it wouldn't cover you if you would go into Yemen. Yemen is a war zone right now. If you would fly into Yemen and then say like, oh, my flight got canceled, I need help getting out of here. Nope.
Right. That makes sense from an insurance perspective.
Yeah, because otherwise there's no way that they can come out ahead financially on covering certain places. So there's a very limited amount of places that they don't cover.
Huh. All right. Yeah, I have to do that. That was a good reminder. Okay. And how many of these does your wife come on? Because like, I know for me, I wouldn't want to go to probably 70% of the countries you travel to.
My wife has been to a pretty good amount of countries. She had not, I think before we started dating, my wife had been to US, Brazil, England, Germany. Let's say my wife had been to like 7 or 8 countries before we started dating. And now she's been to something like 55, I think.
Wow.
So I think she has always wanted to travel, but never had people really who also wanted to travel with her. So that was part of it. Also, didn't know a whole lot about how travel works. Then also like we got into travel hacking. So that has also then really helped. There are definitely places she's not interested in going. Right. So I do those as solo trips. And then we try to take, like my wife is in vet school. So whenever she has school breaks, we try to take a trip together to places that she's more interested in.
Did you say your wife is in vet school?
Yeah.
Oh, you're my new best friend.
So during her
Free
school
consults.
during her school breaks, we try to always go somewhere together that's somewhere that she's more interested in. And then like we sat down and talked one time and she kind of told me like, these are the places that I really want to go. Don't go there without me because I really want to go there. And then other places like, you know, if I find a good deal or want to go there because I'm going to some other place that's next to it, she's not that bummed.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so this brings up an interesting question for me. So it seems like you have to do a ton of planning just to get to your destinations, right? Because obviously there are a lot of moving parts when you're going to countries that a lot of people don't travel to. So are you a big planner as far as your itinerary when you get there? Or do
No.
you sort of just take it by,
Yeah,
like
I would
chance?
say most things is like just kind of see what happens today and just like kind of start walking, go out the front door of the hotel. Yesterday I went right, today I go left.
Okay, so that's what I do. And sometimes I wish that I were more of a planner because like I'll miss something that people are like, how could you not have gone to this? And I'm like,
I mean, I do tend to like, I'll Google top 10 things to see in Sydney and try to see those. And I'll mark them just on like drop a pin on these places on my phone. And just kind of as I'm walking around, I'll look and oh, I'm close to something. I should turn right here and go to that. But as far as like planning my time, like 8 o'clock, we need to do this. And then at 10:30, there's going to be the block. That really only happens when either we have like a limited time or there are things that you just can't do without booking in advance. Like my wife and I went to Rome back in the week between Christmas and New Year. Rome is packed during that time. It's like the week between Christmas and Easter.
that makes sense.
If you don't book online in advance for the Colosseum, you're gonna wait in line for like 3 hours. If you don't book online in advance for a tour of the Vatican, it's not going to happen. So those kinds of things, we did have to book a time. It's like, hey, at 8:30, we have to be standing in this spot. But other than that, we tried to just like take it easy because like I'm on vacation. I want to sleep in. I want to relax.
So that's interesting. Like, I guess you're sort of like me in that respect, where all the planning goes into like where I'm going, how I'm getting there. And then once I get there, I'm kind of like, maybe
Yeah,
I
see
should
what
message
happens.
somebody.
Yeah, see what happens.
Yeah. Well, luckily for us too, we have friends who have traveled to, pretty much every place. Well, maybe not you, every place you could go, but for me at least, so I'm always able to say like, hey guys, what should I do?
I also always like to ask at the hotel, like, what's the one thing that you think that I shouldn't miss while I'm here?
Yeah. That's a great thing to ask at the beginning of every trip because like a lot of the time the concierge, like they live in the city, so they won't necessarily tell you only the touristy stuff,
Yeah. And I find that
That's
most
a
of them
great
will say,
idea.
well, like, well, other than like,
Right.
you're in Sydney. Well, okay, other than the Opera House, the one thing that you shouldn't miss, because they already know that you're going to go to the top three.
Of course.
They already know that like if you're in Rio, like you're going to Christ Redeemer. So I like to ask, like, what's one thing that like you as a local, what do you think I shouldn't miss while I'm here? And that can
Yeah,
be
that's a
really
great.
interesting because that has also led to some of my favorite experiences on trips, like things that I wouldn't have known about. And generally people tend to be excited that you're interested in seeing kind of the locals perspective,
Yep.
and they tend to get excited about that. And I've been invited to like, well, hey, I was going to like meet up with my friends for a drink after I get off work in an hour. You want to share a taxi with me and we can just go to this place? And like, I went to a rap battle in Nigeria, just
That's cool.
just by asking somebody like, hey, what's something that I shouldn't miss? And wound up sharing a taxi with this guy after he got off work from the hotel and went and watched a rap battle in the park, which was
Oh my God.
really
That's
interesting.
awesome.
So those
You
kinds of
froze
things,
a little. Okay.
yeah. So those kinds of things are really interesting just by asking that question, because that's not something that I would have found by searching on Google.
Yeah, and people are usually excited to share like their culture with you, I found.
Yeah, exactly.
That actually happens a lot in the Caribbean. Like anytime you ask somebody, you know, like where would you go for dinner? They get like really excited, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the destinations that are on your list, but that you think are going to be really hard to get to?
One that I actually wrote an article about this for Miles to Memories, because Mark wanted me to talk about like what's the most difficult country to visit. Part of that obviously depends on what passport people have. Having a US passport makes a lot of countries pretty easy to visit. But a
Do you
lot of
have
countries,
one? Yes, right?
yeah. So I have, I actually just got citizenship from Brazil. So I have US and Brazilian citizenship now.
Yes, I remember you saying that.
So a lot of the like former Soviet countries are like still kind of suspicious about outsiders in some ways. So Turkmenistan is actually a country that's very difficult. They tend to just be really suspicious about outsiders. So they tend to reject visa applications for just kind of no good reason sometimes. And I know people who have been told like something was suspicious about you when like your eye contact or lack of eye contact when you showed up at passport control seemed suspicious, and they got denied and couldn't get in.
Oh God.
So they just are still kind of suspicious about outsiders. Even all these years later, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Turkmenistan is a country that's actually surprisingly difficult to visit. It actually has less visitors every year than North Korea, which is a strange concept.
Mind-blowing, actually.
So Turkmenistan is a country that I know some people, you just get really lucky, and then I know other people who tried to go 3 times before they finally got in. Their visa application was denied because you know someone who knows someone who's a journalist, and like journalists can't come here.
So you might have trouble.
Yeah, so it's a total coin flip on how it's going to go with Turkmenistan.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So that's one that I know is like I'm gonna plan for it early in case it doesn't work and I have to come back around on it.
Right. Yeah, that would be one of those ones where I would like just start now, and you know, because you might have to try a couple times. Okay. Do you guys ever take any more relaxing, like do you ever go to the same place more than once just because you like it?
I mean, like we've been to Disney a couple times. My parents live in Florida.
Is that why Sean hired you?
My parents live in Florida now, so it's pretty easy for us to visit Disney when we visit them.
Okay.
You know, like we can do a 2-day Disney trip and only need, you know, a couple bucks of gas and 1 night at a hotel. We'll drive like 2.5 hours, leave early in the morning, get to Disney, spend the day, stay at a hotel, Disney the next day, drive back to my parents' house. So those kinds of things, like we've been there several times. Other places that we've been several times. I mean, like we both used to live in New York. So if there's an opportunity for us to pass through New York again, we try to. Where else have we been a couple of times?
So while you're thinking about that, what's your favorite hotel program, by the way? Because I'm curious how, like, which one seems to have the best utility for you doing what you do.
To be honest, the best utility still continues to be Marriott, even though I'm like grow more frustrated and disappointed with them year after year.
Yep. Hate them to death, but I keep their points around because, you know, it's like a necessary evil.
What's funny with Marriott is also that, and I see a lot of, in numerous different travel groups where people say they had trouble redeeming those free night certificates because it's the hotel is booked up, or now they have this like high season, low season, and my free night certificate isn't valid here for 7 months out of the year, only in this other time, but my kids are in school. Those kinds of things. I've had no trouble redeeming those certificates. And I have Platinum Elite with Marriott, but this will be my last year with it, and then I'll let it go because it's not worth that now extra steps to get that status.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the Middle East or in Central Africa or something like this, you show up to a Marriott as a Platinum Elite member and like it blows their mind. Like,
roll out the red carpet.
When was the last time that they saw a Platinum Elite? And I remember actually I went to, so there's a small country in Southern Africa that's kind of near like South Africa, Mozambique, country called Malawi. And I stayed at a Marriott brand. There's a brand called Protea Hotels, which used to be around a lot of parts of Africa, and Marriott bought them years ago. Mm-hmm. It's considered like, it would be kind of like, if you think of a US brand, it would be like one of those like Hampton Inn, like kind of lower brand hotel. Not bad, but it's just like, it serves an economy type purpose.
Right.
So I stayed at a Protea hotel for like 7,000 Marriott points for a night, which is a great deal in my opinion. I showed up and was checking in, and I was gold status at the time. They called the hotel manager from the back room and asked her to personally come, like, give me a tour of the hotel and show me to my room.
Wow.
Because I was the only person in the hotel with status that day. Wow. So it's really different traveling to like places that don't get a lot of people with status. You see just kind of how the different experience is. I remember reading a post from somebody on a travel blog where they stayed at a Hilton in Jordan, but like not near Petra, like in another part of Jordan. And they had diamond status just from simply like signing up for an Amex and like, Aspire gives you an automatic diamond status. And they showed up, and the guy at the front desk said, I don't remember the last time that I met a diamond member.
That's incredible.
But if you're like in Dubai, if you're going to the Maldives, if you're going to like Sydney, these places that a lot of people from the US tend to travel to and bring that status with them because you're running in kind of those same flight patterns, then you're maybe not as likely to get an upgrade. Maybe it can be harder to find availability on the dates that you want. But if you go a little bit outside of that, the treatment, like I remember one time I just happened to email a hotel when I was going to Kuwait, and I said, hey, what's the best way to come to the hotel? I'm going to be arriving at like 8 p.m. So I'm not sure, or I'm going to be arriving like after 8 p.m. What's the best way to come? Because then it's going to be dark. And they said, oh, no problem. What is your flight? And they sent a Mercedes S-Class to pick me up at the airport for free because I had platinum status. Wow. So I hate Marriott, but at the same time, it is kind of everywhere. Yeah. I'm trying to get the Radisson rewards card from US Bank. I've been denied for it twice now because there are several places in certain parts of Africa where Radisson legitimately has the only hotel that you can redeem points for. When I went to Senegal, it was the only hotel in all of the country that you can redeem points for. When I went
these places, so in Senegal, for example, are they on like the travel portals? Like, are they on, Chase Ultimate Rewards and Amex Travel?
They are, but rather than redeeming my Ultimate Rewards, which I tend to save, like, because I find using my Ultimate Rewards for United tends to be like the best for me. So I tend to not use them. And what I did was I just found like a cheap hotel from hotels.com. Right. But a couple cities that I've been to in Africa, like a Radisson Blue property was the only place that you could redeem points for unless you would go through like a shopping portal. Like Amex Travel or using your Chase Ultimate Rewards. I tend to not do that for hotels because I find like if I'm going to do that, I might as well just go on hotels.com and just find something cheap.
Right. What about Airbnb? Do you ever do that?
I do. I've stayed at several good Airbnbs, and that largely depends on if I need to work while I'm there or not. Because I have a job where I teach English online through like one-on-one. I teach like private English lessons to people in China.
Wow.
And so if I'm going to do that, like I need to have a reliable internet source. And when you're sharing internet with like 300 other people in your hotel at the same time, and the guy next to you decides to fire up Netflix, then all of a sudden, you know, like the internet kind of tanks. So if I'm going to be working during the trip, I will stay at an Airbnb so that I can control the noise volume. No one's going to be banging on the door, like housekeeping accidentally tries to come into the room. So I've used Airbnb in several places when I've been working while traveling. If not, then but if I'm not, then I'll just find like a cheap hotel on hotels.com.
Interesting. Okay, let me think. Do I have any other questions? Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Any current events? Anything that's really pissing you off lately?
No, just waiting for some flights to move their waiver periods back so I can cancel them.
Yes. We've had actually good luck with that, but I'm actually lucky to be a procrastinator in this sense, because I will wait until like 2 days before a trip that has like 6 stops to book my flight, because that's just how I am. So I've been very lucky in that all of the trips that I planned, I've only had hotels booked.
Yeah,
and
which is
flights
nice.
have been like, yeah. So
we're trying to get out of we're trying to get out of our flights to Japan because we were going to go to the Olympics, but now it's been pushed back a year.
Of course.
But as of right now, no one is offering waivers on our flights.
When is it? When are your flights? I forget.
End of July. Yeah, end of July. So we're trying to get out of some flights. We need Singapore on going one way, and we need Asia Miles on the way back. So waiting for those, waiting for some kind of like pushback until eventually like country we're transiting through says we can't transit through there. Now we got it. Now I can cancel. Something like this. If not, if I have to pay $50 per person to cancel with Singapore, I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it. That's why I like booking with Singapore. Asia Miles, it's $120 a person, so that's a little different.
And that's to cancel and get all of your miles back?
Yeah.
Neither one of those bother me, actually, because I'm used to like American and British
200 or something.
Yeah.
But I would rather, if I can put it off and then cancel for free. So I'm still riding those out. We've got a couple months to see what happens.
Okay. And then if you're like me, you forget. So like, how do you keep track of that stuff? Like you have like Google Calendar alerts, or you just have it in the back of your mind?
I've been trying to just kind of keep on top of, especially with those, both of them, luckily, Singapore and Asia Miles have been sending out kind of weekly updates about what's going on.
Yeah.
So that one has been easy. I don't really have to think about it. They're going to tell me, we pushed back this waiver for blah, blah, blah. And then I just see what happens.
I think you'll be all right.
So there's a lot of time between now and then.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we'll probably go through July. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I mean, I think we're all kind of going crazy, right?
Yeah. So, and it's at the point where like I want to start planning trips.
I know.
Just to give me something to do and keep my mind occupied.
Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, how much time am I wasting? Yeah. Because if I have to cancel this trip, it's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, so it was awesome to actually meet you in person, even though we talk every single day.
Yeah.
Well, person, in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. Quarantine in person.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool.
From a safe distance away.
Okay, so tell everybody where they can find you when you're not visiting 196 countries.
Yeah, so I live in Brazil right now, but I write frequently for Miles to Memories, so you can check out Miles to Memories. I have some.
And do you have your own like blog or anything?
Nope, pretty low key. But people can check out the Miles to Memories. I actually even have a couple of interesting articles, especially if there are people who either live overseas or are thinking about moving to another country at some point. I've written some articles about what does it take to travel hack points and miles while living in another country. Like how do I receive the credit cards? What address do I use on the
Mhm.
applications? Those kinds of things. So if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff, I have to do a lot of my own research to figure out things, because most of the travel blogs are based on like, hey, there's if I want to go to like France, you're going to need like 50,000 miles to get there. Well, not for me. I'm not, like, I'm flying from a different zone. So I've written a lot of kind of from a different perspective if you live in a different place.
I
People can
actually
check those things
bookmarked, that's a good reminder to go back. I bookmarked one of your articles about like getting a credit card as an expat, because I was curious about that whole process and I forgot to read it, but I will.
So luckily I use my parents' address.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so it's pretty handy.